everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Attract and Retain Customers in an Omnichannel World. My name is Mario Kiriakou, Managing Partner at Ratio, and I'm going to be your presenter for today. So a little something about Ratio. Ratio is a UK digital agency. We're a site called Partner. We help clients to achieve their digital targets and revenue objectives by leveraging data-driven insights and continuous testing and optimization to build experiences which deliver seamlessly across devices and channels. So what's omnichannel? Is it just another addition to the pantheon of marketing buzzwords? Well, the truth is, yes, a little. But like many marketing terms which have lost some of their power from overuse, cloud and big data, I'm thinking specifically about you, the potential behind omnichannel is very real. In one sense, all marketers are moving towards creating an omnichannel experience for their customers without using the phrase. Omnichannel, at its most basic, simply means looking through the eyes of your end customers and identifying how and where they engage with your brand across both offline and online channels, and then designing an experience which leverages the insight you have on your customers to offer a seamless experience across the broad spectrum of channels from call center to web to store to app. The potential of omnichannel to both attract and retain customers is all tied up in the experience which you're able to deliver to customers. As we all know, saying it's all about experience is all well and good, but it's not as simple as that. Delivering a true seamless experience where we take what we know about someone and apply it to different channels such as web to app can be difficult for many reasons, such as, for example, tackling legacy technology issues. You might have internal silo problems, proving the value of additional digital and technology investments, and so forth. But that doesn't mean that the value in tackling this problem isn't worth the investment ultimately for the business. So a couple of the challenges of attracting and retaining customers. Well, there's three things we think to bear in mind to look at. From a customer point of view, and bear in mind, as marketers, we are customers ourselves. Look at the way we engage with brands. We may at times walk into a store and buy something for the first time. We may talk to a salesperson and buy something for the first time. But the likelihood is that we are now engaging with brands and organizations using different channels before we finally walk into the store, make that purchase, or speak to that salesperson. There could be multiple channels. And in most organizations, you're probably dealing with a case where your end customers are touching your brand at multiple touch points. So have you identified and begun to map out these touch points? Because customers are continuously interacting with your brand across different devices. It's a challenge and also an opportunity. They're engaging with you on your apps, on your website, on their mobile site. They may be looking at referral sites, looking at peer reviews. The point is not that look at it as a challenge. The point is to identify where your customers interact with your brand, the devices they use, and have a plan for it. And in terms of experiences that attract and retain customers, organizations and marketers can spend a lot of time thinking about what is a great experience, what is a bad experience, and you can put a lot of thought and effort into it. But really, from the customer's point of view, it's not something they really think about as much as you. As far as they're concerned, is they want to engage with a brand that appeals to them, where they can buy the product or service that they want, they feel will solve their problem. From a customer's point of view, they're really going to think about an experience at the point if it's either bad or good. And the point is to identify where you sit. It's not to say you're either going to have a great experience or a bad experience. The point is, if you've mapped out your touch points, looked at the devices that your end customers are using, there will be areas where you're delivering a great experience, you're delivering a good experience for your clients. There will be areas where you're not. So the point is to identify where you are delivering a good and bad experience. And channels, and where to begin. The challenge for many marketers is trying to master the proliferation of channels and tactics when they're already working at full stretch with their day-to-day roles. The challenge can feel really daunting. Where should we start? How should we implement these changes? What resources are required? Is additional training needed? What will be the impact on the business if I apply X? The simple truth is, like anyone needing to get from A to B, you need to begin by creating a map. And in an omni-channel world, that means understanding the journey from a customer point of view and mapping it out that way and then applying your channels afterwards. Understanding the potential of omnichannel from a high level is one thing, but trying to translate that knowledge into a practical map for you to navigate and implement and apply to your own business is the next step and challenge. Personally, and this is quite an old example, but personally I've always loved this example from Lego on designing like the wow experience. In this instance, it's for a business executive traveling to Lego on a flight from New York to London. It's deceptively simple. It's a deceptively simple way to map out a specific journey, in this instance the flight from New York. It's about identifying the touch points that this user will have or interact with, not just the major things of checking in to a flight, checking to your hotel. It's all the micro touch points from boarding the plane, taking off, what type of seat do they have, are they going to be served a drink, would it be someone meeting them at the other end, how will they check into the hotel, etc. It's about identifying how the experience can be improved. So if you mapped out all the micro touch points that this user will have, it's about identifying perhaps the 3, 4, 5, 6 different areas of that experience that if you tweak and improve, it will incrementally improve the experience in a positive way for your end user and customer. And it's also a simple way of then identifying, okay, so we've identified if we tweak this element, it will improve the experience. But what data is required? Identifying something to improve is one thing, but now we need the data and insight, and later on actually the technology to power that. So it's a simple way of mapping it out. And the reason I've always loved this example, because of its ability to be translated by a marketer to map out your digital and offline journeys from a customer-first perspective. The obvious challenge next is in designing the technology and processes which sit underneath this approach to deliver on the experience and brand promise. Even if you have a plan, marketers are under constant pressure to deliver value immediately and to prove the value of marketing investment. Marketing doesn't exist in isolation. You'll most likely be dealing with other areas of the business who may see the overall value in delivering an omnichannel experience for your end customers, but at the same time, they have their own short-term priorities which they need to deliver against. A classic example is for organizations who have sales departments who may be measured quarterly on revenue generated. What they may be looking for from marketing is just a steady stream of leads to feed a hungry sales force. You could argue all day long that having mapped out the customer journey that you should be giving away more content without asking for any contact details, because your research suggests that may lead to a short-term drop-off in lead capture, but an increase in revenue from a more deeply engaged audience over the longer term. So how do you argue that internally? In one sense you don't, and in one sense you don't have to. Personally, I always believe in striking a balance and not veering between extremes of experience. So if you've identified what an overall improved omnichannel experience can look like and is vastly different from your current experience, perhaps don't look to rip up what you got because it's jarring both for an external audience but also for your internal audience. The way I look at it is you can always look to set up isolated tests to test your assumptions that, for example, in this instance, this example, that by giving away content without contact details being collected will generate a higher volume of sales in the longer term. So you can always look to test your assumptions and look to support your business's long-term priorities, short-term priorities, but also begin to build out what you feel is going to support the business over a longer period. So when you're looking to apply building out an omnichannel experience for your own organization which can support attracting and retaining customers, there's 6 steps that we usually use as a business that we feel that you should apply. And they cover from analysis and research, so looking at the analytics, looking at from a customer first perspective and trying to understand what a good experience is, begin to map out the benefits for the customer as well as for the business, identifying risks and dependencies, technologies, looking at what technologies you need to power an omnichannel experience, how you can apply personalized and relevant experiences across different channels, and ultimately optimization. How do you incrementally improve your experience over time? the good, the bad, and the ugly. With your own brand, if you was to go away today and begin to look at your current experience and what you deliver to clients, there'll be elements you identify which are good, bad, and potentially ugly that you wish to improve. So the step one, so looking to apply analysis and research. So the goal of omnichannel is ultimately to design that customer-first experience. The first place is to begin by analysing the current experience you deliver. So where do you begin? Well, it's important to identify those moments of impact the customer has with your brand, and that can vary from organisation to organisation, from adding an item to a basket, completing a form, logging into your app on an iPhone. It's important to identify those moments of impact, because it's those moments of impact which we'll look to measure, extract insight and analysis, because we want to improve those areas. We want to figure out, are those working? Can we improve it? Can we shorten the experience? Can we make the experience more efficient for our end clients so they can get to where they want to go quicker? So where do we look? Well, the obvious example is to look at your analytics. So look at your analytics. That could vary from Google Analytics to social tools to there's a whole spectrum of different analytics tools you may be using to measure different parts and different channels of your business. So look at those, identify your current engagement rates, your current conversion rates, and use those as a benchmark. They don't necessarily tell you what's wrong, but they can be a way of, they'll tell you perhaps what's wrong, but perhaps not tell you what you should do next. So an example could be looking at your analytics and discovering that you have high engagement rates on a specific part of your website on web, as opposed to mobile, which has extremely high bounce rates. Now, we've identified a problem, and the next thing is to figure out, okay, so we understand that the experience we're delivering on mobile perhaps isn't as great as it is on desktop. What can we do to improve and optimize? And that's something you'll do later on. But you use your analytics to begin to identify what's not working, and also what is working. And customer research. I mean, analytics shouldn't be considered, analytics and data, etc., shouldn't be considered, the be-all and end-all of everything. You should use customer research to augment your analytics by extracting insight from your current users. So you could look to run focus groups, in-depth customer interviews. You could do online surveys. The point is to, in effect, speak to your customers and trying to understand from their point of view how they engage, because there may be elements which are not picked up within your analytics. So it basically augments and provides you a richer data set to support your design of a more fuller, richer omnichannel experience. And competitor comparison. So step outside of your organization, your own data set, your own customer base, and look at what your competitors are doing within your own vertical. Look at companies you admire within your industry. Is the things they're doing which you think actually are great, we can apply those to our own organization, and then look to map those. It's not stealing. It's borrowing great ideas which you can use. But the point is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of improvements have been applied by other organizations. But also take a step back and look outside your own vertical, outside your own industry. We're all consumers, and we engage with dozens of brands every day. So look at the companies that you admire. It may not be, you may be working in retail or charities, etc. So perhaps look at something completely different. There's things that you may be able to pick up to apply to your own business. And analyzing the channels and tactics you'll need to deliver a fuller omnichannel experience. So, looking at what a potentially good experience is going to look like, looking at your analytics to figure out what's working and what's not working is great. It's also important to identify the channels and tactics and also skill sets that we're going to need to deliver on a fuller omnichannel experience. I mean, this is an example from Sitecore. It's not a strictly omnichannel map. We use it because it's a good way of illustrating sort of the tactics and techniques that you could apply to deliver a more omnichannel experience. So at the far right, engage in lifetime customers, which for me has always been about that seamless experience from channel to device, etc., and trying to identify the tactics you need. Now, it's not to be scared or put off by the volume of potential tactics. It's to identify what are the tactics that we need to apply. There may be only 3 or 4. You may not need to apply 20. So it could be about leveraging market automation to automate email to be more relevant, etc. So it could be more highly targeted and segmented. It could be something about applying personalization across channels or optimizing our e-commerce tools. But look to identify the tactics you require to deliver that richer experience. And map in the benefits. Now, with this type of project, you will begin to identify new functionality which you would like to build into your current business to deliver that fuller, richer experience. But it's important that for every digital capability that you have identified, you've also mapped out the benefit for both the customer and the business. So you may, for example, say, as in this example, say we feel that by adding the ability to donate via text message, it will be a better experience for our customers. Great, that's your assumption. What is the benefit to the business? And what is the benefit to the customer? And those two need to dovetail. If you can get those two to dovetail, then you can begin to look at the next steps of how do we actually roll this out and implement it. And the way I would look at this is, if you're looking to do it for your own business, build out a similar map and begin, once you get to this stage, begin to list out additional capabilities that you would like to implement to optimize those touch points, those moments of impact that you've identified previously. And risks and dependencies. When talking about omnichannel, lots of people point to classic examples like Uber and Airbnb as companies which deliver great experiences, and it's really true. But in some respects, it's also really unhelpful. The majority of businesses are not relative startups like Airbnb and Uber are founded in the last 10 years, but established legacy businesses looking to build and improve upon an existing structure. For those type of businesses, it's important to identify the risks and dependencies which will prove challenges which need to be overcome in order to deliver an omnichannel experience to attract more customers. And all of that is about identifying, do we have the right people, do we have the right skill set, do you have the right supporting technology, especially with legacy businesses, established businesses, what type of processes do you currently operate and how are you currently measured? Because to deliver a true seamless experience may require changing your processes and also changing how your teams are measured. If you have a marketing team where you have separate teams for managing email or display or search, each of those teams may have separate KPIs where they're interested in optimizing those. Whereas to deliver a fuller omnichannel experience, you may look to deliver an experience across all those different channels. So how do you reward the entire team? A couple of things to ask yourself. How do we design an experience which leverages and integrates all those channels? And how do we measure and reward work of all departments in driving sales and revenue? So a lot of companies may still use last click attribution, where very last click for a sale gets all the value. And that's great for that specific channel. But there's a whole lot of work that's gone before that. So you have lots of different channels, and a lot of different teams have done a lot of work. They're not really rewarded. And you may say it's not about the reward, but if you can measure and reward everyone in the team, then you can begin to focus everyone on optimizing across all channels. Technology. There's no getting away from that. At some point you will need to look at the supporting technology. And the reason why we always keep this in a step forward, further down the track, is that technology shouldn't come first. It's not your #1 priority when thinking, okay, I want to deliver a better omnichannel experience. What do we need to buy in terms of technology? That's actually kind of last. You need to do the mapping exercise first, figure out what that experience could potentially look like, and then map your current and proposed technology stack against the omnichannel capabilities you wish to implement. So in the earlier slide where we talked about the digital capabilities you would like to implement, if you've mapped all those out, then you begin to ask yourself, do we have the right technology currently which can help us to execute on those capabilities? If not, the technology that we're looking to purchase, can it support that? And again, if you're using multiple technologies, which like most companies are doing nowadays, how do those different pieces of technology talk to each other? Because ultimately, you're going to be using multiple channels, from website, mobile, apps, social tools. You'll be using lots of different channels, and each of those channels are siloed. But if you're going to look to move towards delivering this fuller omnichannel experience, it's how you can leverage your content and digital assets to deliver that seamless experience across that top layer, across all those different channels. And then your next layer down, how do you currently analyze the success of channels and campaigns? How do you extract insights? What analytics systems do you use? Most probably you'll be looking at using multiple different systems, which is fine, but when you're looking to analyze the impact of an overall omnichannel experience, is how can you have almost like a single layer of data, almost like a single view of a customer, where you can extract insight on what a user is doing across all different channels they've engaged with. Why is that important? Well, because there's an awful lot of marketing technology out there, and this slide by Chief Martech, I remember looking at this about 5-6 years ago, and you could actually read some of the names on it. It's almost illegible now, and it's for a reason, because the marketing sector is jam-packed with established businesses, startups, looking to solve specific marketing problems with new pieces of technology. And it can be scary to figure out, okay, what do we need to buy, what do we need to identify as the right tool to solve this problem? And it's difficult, especially if you was to just go straight in and say, okay, we need mobile marketing technology, we need something to support optimization and testing. Okay, let's look at something like that. I mean, that could work, but it's better to take a step back, identify what that experience could look like, design it up front, and then again begin to say, okay, we've got a better idea now of the type of technology, the specific capabilities within technology that we need to purchase and buy or implement, etc., to actually execute on this plan. So step 5, applying personalized experiences. So we've got to the point where we've built out an omnichannel experience, we've got the right technology to power the experience, but what exactly are we serving? So are we leveraging insight from device to device to deliver more relevancy? And it's not just about delivering personalization from device to device, from someone returns to your site, do we know something about them, can we make the experience more relevant? Yes, that's important, but it's also about making the experience more efficient for the end user. So if someone's called a call center before, but they filled in their details online, do we ask for their details again, or do we streamline the process because we've already captured those details? It delivers a better experience from the client. Obviously, from the organization's point of view, you need to begin to think about, okay, if I have a call center and I have a website, how are those two separate pieces of technology talking together to pass that data along? And the final step, optimizing touch points. True omnichannel experiences, once you've designed them and implemented and rolled them out, you don't just step back, have a glass of champagne and say it's great. It's actually the beginning of your journey. There is no start and no end, the truth is. It's about continuous optimization. Every experience, every touch point can be improved at some point. And it's about having a robust way of identifying the touch points, identifying the devices, how your consumers interact with your brand, and testing and optimizing that. So that could be, in our early example, talking about high bounce rates on mobile devices. Are you testing, run, for example, A/B and multivariate testing on different versions of mobile layouts, for example, to figure out a way of improving that experience for that specific user in that specific use case? It's not just about testing and optimizing specific individual touch points, those moments of impact. It's about looking to optimize across the entire journey. And it's not a linear journey of customer starts top of the funnel and walks linearly all the way through to sell. It's about that zigzag approach. Customers come into your business, they leave, they interact off-site, they interact in store, online. It's about figuring out those moments of impact and applying a robust way of testing and improving each of those elements. So what can you take away from today's webinar? Well, important to have a customer-first approach to building out an omnichannel experience. Omnichannel always starts from the customer's eyes outwards. Map out those moments of impact that customers will have with your brand, because those are the areas that you will look to optimize going forward. identify your short-term and long-term goals and try and align the two and achieve both your short-term and long-term objectives. Map your digital improvements against both your business and customer objectives, and don't buy technology and then try and figure out a way to use it later. It's always a recipe for disaster. And testing and optimization is always key to improving the experience incrementally over time. But that brings us to the end of today's webinar. So I'll just have a look now and see if we've got any questions. So we've got a few minutes for Q&A, so any questions, please feel free to ping them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So we have a question coming in on, so this user, we use Sitecore and Eloqua, so Sitecore for CMS, Eloqua for marketing automation. Is there a way to deliver an omnichannel experience with two different systems? Yes. So we've talked about, I think I've touched upon this in today's presentation. Yes, you can. You're unlikely, when looking to deliver, building out an omnichannel experience to attract customers, you're unlikely to have just one piece of technology. You're likely to have, you might be using something like Sitecore for CMS, you might be using Eloqua for automation, you might be using Salesforce as CRM. Yes, you can. The key way is to build out a plan on how you want data to be passed between systems. So in the case of Sitecore and Eloqua, you can use things like tracking codes applied to marketing automation campaigns, where when a user then triggers on the hyperlink, information is being pulled through from your CMS to then deliver insight and a personalized experience based on that. You can also apply it to things like integrated things like Salesforce. You can do, as a classic example, people have CRM systems, so how do we deliver a front-end experience based on all our different data stores, so not just web, but also say CRM. You can integrate your web property with your Salesforce to then, specifically with Sitecore, to then personalize the front experience based on what we know within, say, their Salesforce contact record. And you can begin to do this with different systems where we could pass information from technology to technology. The important thing is to identify what you want to deliver for the front-end customer and then look at, from the sort of the IT and technology standpoint, on what work needs to be put in place to achieve that. Okay, I think that was looks like it's our only question for today. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Just to let you know, we have another webinar next week. It's a part of a summer summit, a digital summit that we're currently running. Next week's webinar is on planning and optimize content strategy. We will be sharing a recording and the slides from today's webinar. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed today's session.